Hey y'all, Etta James is finally here, honey. Now listen, I want to make something clear. I know that I read this lady's book, but child, listen, when I tried to just do my video based on just saying what she was saying in the book, it was boring. I ain't gonna lie, it was boring. So although I mentioned things that she says happened, everything I mentioned she says happened, okay, in her book, I sprinkled some sass-so on it. You know what I'm saying? I acted some stuff out. So, I had to. I wasn't finna put nothing boring up. And when I say sprinkle some sass-so, when I get to talking about Willie John and his Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, the way that I said he acted when he turned into the bad guy, that's an example of how it is when I sprinkle some sass-so on it. Anyways, let's get to the video.
Hella out! Move that tail out the way. Sitting up there trying to do an intro. Folks been waiting for this doggone video. Get out of here.
Trying to do an intro.
Ain't nobody don't want to see no intro.
Okay, dog.
You better get all the way out of here.
Okay, I'm gone. Damn.
What is up, Scandalites and Says So Squad? This is Ashley with Ashley Says So, and I am back with another Old Hollywood Scandals video. Let me go ahead and get my shout outs out the way. First, we have Brenda Davis, Sweet Baby Jesus, Chucktown QT, Joseph Arnold, Kimberly McGee, Valicia Normal, Sheandrell Divine, Tyra Rice, Black Cougar 1959, and Leo's Tarot. Thank you guys so much for signing up for my membership. There are more shout outs to come, so don't fret. I do want to get this out of the way. I am not sure what is true or false on this video. Yes, I did read Etta James's book, but y'all know how I am about my disclaimer, so I don't care if it's 100% fact. I'm not sure what's true. Let's go ahead and get to it. James Etta Hawkins was born on January the 25th, 1938 in Los Angeles, California. Her mother was a 14-year-old teenager named Dorothy, and her father was always listed as unknown. However, Etta felt up until the day that she died that her true father was a man named Minnesota Fat. Now, since Dorothy was only a teenager when she got pregnant, the state let her have her baby, and then they had her tubes tied and they sent her off to a reformatory school. And baby James Etta, whom I'm going to start calling Etta because I don't want nobody to get confused. So baby Etta was sent to live with an aunt, and this aunt's name was Cosetta. And actually, Etta was named for this aunt because, as I stated before, the aunt's name is Cosetta and her husband's name was James, so James Etta. But let me tell you something about Aunt Cosetta real quick. She didn't care nothing about that baby being named after her. Aunt Cosetta did not want to take Etta James in. And the first reason was because she did not like her little sister, Dorothy. She couldn't stand her. She thought she was slow. And the second reason was because Aunt Cosetta was a prostitute. And child, Etta James said that her Aunt Cosetta was so good at being a prostitute that men would be falling over themselves to throw their money at her. Some men even wanted to marry her. So anyways, that's a little background of the environment that little Etta James spent her first months of life in, because Aunt Cosetta, although she didn't want to take Etta in, she eventually gave in and adopted her niece, and she kept her for 6 months. And on that 6th month, Dorothy got out of reformatory school. And if it was up to Dorothy, she would have left Etta right there with her aunt. But Cosetta was like, no ma'am, Dorothy, this is your baby. You need to come get her. So Dorothy came to get her child. And as soon as Dorothy did come to get baby Etta, she went and rented a room at a rooming house, went downstairs to the owners of the rooming house, knocked on their door, and when they opened the door, she handed little Etta over and was like, here, hey, can you raise my baby for me? And I guess this happened a lot back then because the people said yes with no problem. And that just blows my mind because essentially these were strangers that she was handing her baby to. But they said yes. And the people that said yes, their name was Mama Lou and her husband, Mr. Jesse. These people took Etta James in and they raised her up until she became a teenager. Now, the whole time Etta was living with Mama Lou and Daddy Jesse, which is what she started calling him, Daddy, she did see her birth mother, Dorothy, every once in a while, but it was a little bit. Like, she saw so little of Dorothy, she started calling Dorothy the mystery lady or the nighttime lady. And that is because every time Dorothy would stop by the house, she wouldn't come to visit. She'd just come knocking at 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that, barge right into the house and go into the bathroom. When she got into the bathroom, she was primping her makeup, putting on lipstick, things like that. And Etta James said that she remembered like standing in the doorway of the bathroom just looking at her mother, admiring her. And Mama Lou would come and tell her, hey, Etta, that's your mama. Her name is Dorothy. That is your mother. But Dorothy rarely made conversation with little Etta. And out of the many visits she talked about, there was one visit that she talked about that stuck out to me because because on this visit, Dorothy came through the door like she always did, went to the bathroom, and she was putting on her red lipstick. And so Etta was just standing in the doorway at first, but then she started like making noises, jumping around. Y'all know how it is when a child wants to get their mother's attention. So Etta was doing all of that, you know, playing meh, 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 meh. But when this was not getting her mother's attention, Etta was like, well, I want my mama to pay attention to me. So she spotted her mother's makeup palette sitting on the counter, and Etta just was like, pow! To the makeup palette. Makeup went everywhere. Etta said it was a big brown cloud all over the bathroom, child. So the makeup is all over Dorothy's dress, and Dorothy is furious. She starts crying and screaming, and Dorothy looks down at Etta, and she's calling her all kind of names. You little this, you little that. And so Mama Lou rushes into the bathroom and gets Etta and yanks her out of there. But that story really stood out because it really explained the dynamic between Etta and her birth mother. Another thing that happened to Etta while she was living with Mama Lou is that she started singing in the choir. And I guess this was around when she was 6 or 7. And let me pause right here and tell y'all one thing. One thing Etta did not really do in her book was tell the years of the things that happened, and she also rarely gave her age, only sometimes. So when I'm telling you guys this, you know, I'm not sure of the age, okay? But I'm guessing she's probably around 5, 6, or 7 at this time when she starts singing in the choir. And when she gets in the choir, she loves it. But the choir director, his name is James Earl Hines, and he feels like Etta can sing really well, but she sings nasally. She sings high-pitched from her chest. So what James started to do was, pow, punch Etta in the chest. And when he did it, Etta would be like, you know, because he's knocked the air out of her chest, and he'd be like, stop singing from your chest, sing from your stomach. Every time you sing high-pitched or from your chest, I'm going to punch you in your chest. And he continued doing that. And Etta says that that is how she got her deep voice, you know, that, or something. I don't know how Etta sings. Y'all know how she sings. But that's how she got that voice. But clearly, this is abuse. And not only did she have to deal with her choir director, she also had to deal with the pastor acting crazy sometimes. Etta said the pastor would be walking up to the pulpit with his robe on, right? Robe swinging from side to side, and he is naked underneath, honey. This man has nothing on. The folks in the front row is just appalled because they see his banana swinging everywhere because he, hallelujah, praising God and jumping up, and his stuff just going everywhere. So the folks on the front row is like, oh my Lord. But besides this choir director that's punching her in the chest and this pastor that likes to go nude up under his robe, Etta's life was really uneventful when she was living with Mama Lou. That is up until she got a little bit older in age, and Dorothy used to stop by Mama Lou's, and whereas when Etta was kind of younger, she would hardly talk to Etta. Now when she was stopping by, she was picking Etta up and taking her to a hotel room with her, then leave the hotel room, and Etta would be sitting in the room all day, sometimes 2 days in a row by herself, and she would be starving. One time she said she remembered being so hungry, and suddenly she heard a knock at the door. When she opened the door, it was Mama Lou. Mama Lou had tracked Dorothy down and came and got Etta. That was her baby. So Mama Lou and Daddy Jesse were the only stable people and the only stability that Etta had throughout her young life. And then when she was 12 years old, she heard her Mama Lou screaming from the bathroom, Etta, Etta! And so she goes in there, and when she opened the door, that's all she see. And if y'all laughing, y'all going to hell, because I'm not trying to be funny when I do that, because I did this because Mama Lou was like froze up like that. That's what Etta said, because she was having a stroke and she couldn't get out of this position. So Etta had to pick her up off of the toilet where she was and carry her to a bed. And when Etta got her settled in the bed, she left the house and went for a walk. She just wanted to clear her mind, but while she was walking, a car pulled up beside her and was like, you need to come with me, your Mama Lou has passed away. So during the funeral for Mama Lou, Dorothy comes back from wherever she is and she tells Etta, you need to come with me. This is when they're actually putting Mama Lou in the ground. And Etta is like, you can't just take me away. I don't have no clothes. And Dorothy is like, you don't need no clothes. You need to just come with your mama. And so Etta is like, well, can I please at least say bye to Daddy Jesse? And Dorothy said no. She wouldn't even allow her to say goodbye to the man who had raised her all her life. And Dorothy claims it's because she didn't trust Etta alone with Daddy Jesse, but that's kind of weird because you were trusting her the whole time he was raising her. Anyway, Dorothy and Etta go to San Francisco, and for a little while, Etta is sent to live with her Uncle Frank, who is also located in San Francisco. And she's living with him because Dorothy don't have herself together. and she still wants to run the street. But soon Dorothy gets herself together enough to get a room, and Etta comes to live with her. And this is the first time that she's ever had to really live with her birth mother, and it is a disaster. Dorothy is a terrible mother. Not only is she doing what she wants to do, she's rude to Etta, she's mean to Etta, she says really hurtful things. And then one day when Etta is just chilling in her room, all of a sudden she hears from the bathroom somebody saying, Etta, come help me, please come help me. When she gets in the bathroom, this is all she sees. And so Etta is going mad. She's going crazy. She's like, oh my gosh, this is happening to my own mother a second time. Like, what am I going to do? So Etta goes and she helps Dorothy off of the toilet while she's carrying Dorothy to the bedroom. Here go Dorothy. Girl. Child, I got you. You were scared, honey. And Etta's like, Dorothy, why would you do that? And Dorothy was like, well, I thought it was going to be funny because that's what you said Mama Lou did when she died. And Etta's like, where in the world would that be funny? And so Dorothy, upset that her daughter is reacting to her this way, starts arguing. So her and Etta are arguing back and forth, and then things turn really crazy when Dorothy grabs a butcher knife and starts trying to stab Etta with it. But Etta is about as big as Dorothy now, so she wrestles Dorothy to the ground and she grabs the knife out of her hand and she throws it away. And then Dorothy gets up crying and telling Etta, you are nothing but the devil's child. You have always asked me who your father is and I never told you. That's because your father is the devil and you are the seed of Satan. And when Etta hears this, it breaks her heart that her mother is saying this about her. So she leaves and starts running the street. And although she does come home after this, Etta James is now a changed person. She has turned into a wicked and wild teenager. She is now hanging out in the streets all hours of the night. She starts stealing. She starts hanging out with girl gangs. She starts, talking to the boys, fantasizing with the boys. And she also says she starts hunching the wall, child. Etta said that she started listening to hoochie coochie music, like real bad, nasty music for that time. And she used to just be rubbing it, rubbing it up against the wall. Just hiding the tail, child. And she also said that one of the people she was fantasizing about while rubbing it up against the wall was Jesse Belvin, because he lived in the same neighborhood that she lived in. And at this time, they are both teenagers, but Jesse Belvin is a male teenager. He's skinny, but he's that built kind of skinny. You know what I'm saying? He got long legs. I believe she also said he was bow-legged. So you know the type. What? Child. Y'all know them boys when y'all was teenagers. Don't play with me. But anyways, all Etta could do was fantasize, because she says although Jesse was cool with her, he did not look at her as girlfriend material. She admitted that she was not a looker at this time, and he had much prettier girls to choose from, and he chose them. Now, although Etta is running the streets and doing what she wants to do, of course she still comes home and she still lives with her mother. So one day while she was at home, she was just in the kitchen, I suppose, and just doing something. And all of a sudden Dorothy says, look, gal, look at the TV. So Etta looks up at the TV and she's looking at this white man. And Etta's like, okay. And Dorothy says, well, that's your father. You've been asking me all this time. There's your daddy right there. And Etta is mesmerized, and who she sees on the television set is Minnesota Fats, a famous pool shark for that time. And Etta goes on to learn later on in her life that Dorothy was a groupie for the actor Willy Best. And Minnesota Fats used to hang out with Willy Best, so Dorothy said that she had a sexual relationship with Minnesota Fats. And the thing is, Etta actually heard this story from Willy Best, because when she got famous, she ran into other famous people. And of course, hearing this story straight from the source pretty much confirmed to Etta that Minnesota Fats was indeed her father. Now, let's get back to talking about Etta's street life. This girl is out here acting a fool. And that girl gang I told you about that she's hanging with, they are really bad. Like, they are really out here doing some bad things. Like I said, they're all in the boys' face, but then one day, this Hispanic girl moves into the neighborhood and the boys' attention go from Etta them to that Hispanic girl. And Etta them is just like, who she thinks she is? I know she don't, And they're telling themselves, she thinks she better than us. She got all that long, pretty hair. And of course, the girl is not even paying them any attention. Y'all know how it is when you're a teenage girl. Well, Etta them, not only did they just talk about this girl, they took it a step further and cornered this girl and beat the brakes off of her. They beat her so bad that Etta and some of her friends were locked away in a juvenile detention home. But they didn't stay for long, because when their court date approached, they told the judge, well, judge, Judge, we had to beat her up. She called us the N-word. And it was a lie, but the judge believed it and let him off. And this picture that I just put up is actually a picture of Dorothy and Etta walking away from the juvenile court. So not only is Etta hanging out with this girl gang, she also hangs out with these two other females that are just as bad as the girl gang. And their names are Abby and Jean. They are sisters. And then let me slip this story in real quick. So you know how I said Etta is stealing and stuff, right? So I believe it was Etta and Jean, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, I think they like snuck in the club one night or something like that. And there's this stripper, you know, this shake dancer dancing. And so Etta and Jean sneak to the dressing room and they pull her outfits out and they're dancing around, you know, holding it up to them. Well, then they decide, hey, let's steal this stuff so we can really put it on. And so they steal it, and then when they get home, this way Etta gonna say, child, we licked in them doggone panties. Baby, them panties was brown and crusted up in the bottom, honey. Child, them panties was stinking, honey. But it's like, you know, and y'all, I'm sorry, but that was funny. But she did say this, but the thing is that that's what you get. Those panties don't belong to you. And now, not only is these panties stinking, your hands stinking because you sitting up there stealing somebody's panties. So anyways, to get back to the main story, like I said, Etta is now hanging out with Jean and her sister Abby, and she is hanging out with them tough. And although she likes them and she's really cool with them, the real reason that she's hanging around them so tough is because they have an older brother. His name is Alfonso. And Etta said that their older brother is fine. Looks like he been sent from the heavens, honey. She says that he's a mix of Thelonious Monk and Billy D. Williams. And so Etta starts rubbing up against this older brother, you know, all in his face. And this guy is 22 years old, so he's not really paying her any attention at first. But then he starts to notice this little girl is coming on to me. This is ridiculous. Where's her mama? Because I'm not finna deal with this. I'm lying, child. He noticed that she started coming on to him and he promptly took her virginity. And Etta described her first time as really fast and really icky. She just said that it was kind of one of those things where they just had space and opportunity and they just went for it. There was definitely no passion or anything like that. And then after it was over, they were no couple and they didn't even talk, you know. And Etta said she was fine with this. She said that she knew that he was not going to look at her like that. She said she knew, once again, she was not a looker. You know, she was just a little teenage girl with a bushy ponytail. She knew that man wasn't into her and she wasn't worried about it. But it really seemed like to me that Etta was giving herself away just to have a piece of a man. And to be quite frank, the girl was boy crazy. And this behavior did not stop. Even when she became an adult, which y'all are going to find out about in just a minute, she was boy crazy, man crazy. It was all about a man when it came to Etta James. So Etta is hanging out with Abby and Jean and doing the do with their brother every once in a while. While she's hanging out with these two girls, they all discover that they have a knack for singing. So they come up with a group called the Creolettes. And the Creolettes are not a bad group. So they start to get noticed around town and they are asked to sing at different places. And one of those places was a record hop. And when they sang there, Hank Ballard and the Midnighters showed up and they sang their hit song, Work With Me Annie. And when Etta saw the crowd's reaction to this, she went home and started writing and came up with an answer song. And this was called Roll With Me Henry. And let me slip this in here. Not only are Etta and her little group writing and singing songs, they are also becoming groupies. And although being a groupie is not something to be admired, it was the whole groupie thing that really got Etta James on the map. And that is because one night Johnny Otis, the band leader, came into town and Abby went to his show and then she went back to the hotel with him. And when they got there, they're talking, you know, and Abby tells him, well, I'm a part of the group called the Creolettes and we are really good singers, especially our lead singer. Her name is James Etta and she can really blow your socks off. And Johnny Otis is like, really? Well, get her on the phone. And so Abby calls Etta. So Etta got into a cab and she rode down to the hotel. And she gets out of the cab and we're about to sing and Etta freezes up and she's like, I am too nervous. And she asks Johnny, can she and the girls go into the bathroom and shut the door and sing that way? And Johnny is like, you know, child, whatever, it don't matter. Just do what you got to do because I want to hear you sing. So they go in there and they start to sing and immediately Johnny Otis is floored. And that's all she wrote. He opens up the bathroom door and he's like, okay, I need you girls to come with me tonight to Los Angeles. And so Etta them are all like, you know, yeah, you know, high-fiving, yeah, come on, girl. And Johnny is like, all right, calm down. How old are you? How old are you? You know, he's going down the line asking how old they are. When it gets to Etta, he says, how old are you? And Etta says, I'm 18. And Johnny Otis says, you lying. So can you get a note from your mother saying that you can go to Los Angeles with me? And Etta's like, yeah, sure, I can. But in reality, Etta couldn't get no note from her mama because Dorothy wasn't off running the streets this time. At this moment, Dorothy was locked up. But that didn't matter none, child. Etta went right home, forged a note, and forged her mother's signature and brought it to Johnny Otis. And the next morning, all of them were off in the car, headed to Los Angeles. As soon as they get to Los Angeles, Johnny Otis changes their name from the Creolettes to the Peaches. And then with James Etta, he changes that to Etta James. So that is when she becomes Etta James. And he signs them to a record label named Modern Records, and he puts them in the studio. As soon as they get in the studio, he's like, hey, y'all need to sing that song that you wrote, that Roll With Me song. And they're like, okay, Roll With Me, Henry. They record the song, they put it out, and the song is doing well. As a matter of fact, it's doing so well that Etta ends up getting herself a 1955 Cadillac DeVille. And you may be wondering why it's only Etta who got that car. That is because the Peaches did not go anywhere from the start. I mean, they signed their name on the record label and then the group just fell apart, child. But it didn't matter. They were all still friends, and sometimes Abby and Jean would travel with Etta whenever she would go on tour, like this first tour that she was about to go on, because Roll With Me Henry was climbing the charts, and you know when the song is hot you have to tour. And now we are about to get into a lot of tales from Etta James's tour, and these will go over the years because she had a ton of tales, and like I said, she never really gave the year. Now this is actually her very first tour, so she has her Cadillac and she's driving that, and Abby goes with her on the road this time. They go and they do a gig, and they go to a motel that night. When they get in the room, since they have been up all night, they are beat. They lay down and go to sleep, and the very next morning, Etta is getting everything ready, and she looks out the window to look at her brand new car again, and her car is gone. And so Etta, as well as everybody else, is frantic. You know, oh my God, somebody stole my car. Oh my goodness. And they start making phone calls, and come to find out her car has been repossessed. Apparently, Etta had went to the car lot, picked the car out, and then never even made no payment on it. I guess she just thought she was such a star that she could say, that car right there. And they were like, oh, okay, you could just have it. Ain't paid no money. Come to find out, she ended up owing $300. And they told her, if you get that $300, you can have your car back. And Etta didn't know where she was going to find the money. But Abby was like, you know what, Etta, don't worry, girl. I'm gonna rescue us. And so Abby gets on the phone with one of the men she had been a groupie for. And this man was Fats Domino. And she goes to see him, and she's like, knock, knock, knock. He's like, what's up, Abby? You know, how's it going, baby? Fats, I need you. Etta done got into some real big trouble. Well, you know, she lost her car, and we need 300. The door closed in her face. Child, Fats wasn't trying to hear that. And so Abby had to come back to Etta with a cover of embarrassment over her face, letting her know that, hey, that didn't work out. Now let's move on to our next tale. And this tale is about a tour that Etta took with Johnny Guitar Watson. And Etta fell in love with Johnny Guitar Watson just like she almost did with every guy. You know, she thought he was handsome. She really wanted to be one of his ladies, but Johnny Guitar Watson didn't want her to be one of his ladies. And Etta said she got that vibe right off that he was kind of friend-zoning her, you know, making her feel more like his sister. And so she was like, you know, that's cool, I'll be your sister. And even though she agreed to be this to him, it was hard for Etta. Let me tell you why it was so hard. It was so hard because while they were touring, everybody was traveling in the same car, and Etta a lot of times sat right beside Johnny Guitar Watson. Well, Johnny Guitar Watson slept a lot. And every time, Etta says, every time that man closed his eyes to go to sleep, he would have a wet dream. And so Etta and everybody else would be just sitting there riding, and they start hearing snoring, and all of a sudden Etta looks over, and this is all she sees. Zoing! And Etta said it was an amazing sight, honey. I mean, she said it was wonderful. She just loved looking at it because she said it was like sticking way up. You know what I mean? And because of this, you know, she enjoyed it for a little while. But then Etta was like, you know, ain't no need of me sitting up there getting hyped up off the look of the thing if I can't get none of it. So, you know, after a while, it started getting on her nerves, and she started being like, ugh. But just because she was like, ugh, don't mean it would stop him from going to sleep and having these dreams. So Etta said she got so sick of it that now, every time he went to sleep, she would wait until the zoing came, and then she would take some rope and wrap it around it. That's how big, apparently, this thing was. wrap it around it, and then tie the other end of the rope around the steering wheel. And therefore, whoever was driving, who was of course in on the joke, would turn the steering wheel like this. It would jerk him and yank him. And she said he would wake up like, girl, is you crazy? Don't do that. Stop doing that. And Etta would just laugh it off, but she also said she didn't stop doing it. So now this next tour story is about Bo Diddley, and he's gonna come up in another story too. But anyways, this story is just basically about him. So Etta is on tour with him and the Clovers. They are driving late at night on the tour bus, and they get to the gig, and Etta is asleep. She's tired, you know. So Bo Diddley starts shaking her. Wake up, girl, we here. And Etta doesn't move. So he shakes her again. Wake up, girl, we here. And Etta looked him straight in his face and said, get out of my face. And Bo Diddley said, pah! Etta's lips said, brrr. She was stunned. And everybody else on the bus was stunned too. But finally, the Clovers was like, man, did you just slap her? And Bo Diddley was like, I sure did. Did you hear what she just said to me? And the Clovers was like, man, don't hit her like that no more. If you hit her like that, we gonna have to jump on you. And then Bo Diddley, he packed up his stuff and ran off the bus, child. And this next tour tale is about Little Willie John. Etta says that Little Willie John was so handsome and so cute, and she said he was so funny, but she also said that he was a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. He would be funny, loving, and caring one moment, and then the next moment he'll be like a gremlin child trying to kill somebody. And so Etta said you never really knew which one you were going to get. And she also said that he was a major jokester. She said he was the type to pour lemonade over your head and pull your dress up so your TT and booster hanging out, you know. And she even said that he would stick his finger in your booster hole. So he was just crazy, and also he was a thief. Etta said that they would go and gig in small towns, and all of the drug dealer men, y'all know when the celebrities come down and perform at these local clubs, you always have the high rollers or the drug dealers of the town want to come through there. Well, that's how it was back then. And so they would come and want to hang out, and Little Willie John would be hanging out with them, you know. And so Little Willie John would be like, ooh, gee, that's a ring you got there. Man, look at that diamond. It's shining, boy. Hey, man, can I floss? Can I get your ring and wear it on stage when I sing? And so the drug dealer be like, here, look, man, take it. You know, thinking he all cool. Baby, when the show was over, Little Willie John was gone and that ring was gone too. And then we get to a really, really juicy tour story, because this tour story involves a woman named Blondine. Now, Abby and Jean sometimes came with Etta to sing backup for her, but they couldn't come this time. So Etta invited a woman named Blondine. This was her friend. But Blondine was a ho, 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 like for real. Like, this girl came on the tour and started all kind of mess. I mean, she was sexy. She had legs that came all the way up to here. She had a big boobs, and Etta said she had these hazel eyes, and she said she had chipmunk cheeks, but her face was pretty, you know, so she was a really pretty girl, and she had no inhibitions. She threw them to the wind, so she slept with everybody. Legs just stayed like that, and all the band members would sleep with her, you know, and some of them ended up falling in love with her, and so they would fight each other. She would start fist fights. Also, these men would sometimes leave their wives, so you have to deal with wives showing up like, you know, Johnny, why you ain't called me? What's going on? And the man is like, you know, screw you, Arlene. I done moved on to Blondine. So it was just all kind of confusion and mess going on. Blondine had so much mess going on that the tour manager told Etta, hey, your friend has to go home. She has to leave here. And Etta's like, why? And he's like, I can't keep a tour together. How am I going to keep a tour together if these guys are trying to kill each other? Then some of them are quitting because their heart is broken. You know, he said it's just too much. Blondine needs to leave. So Blondine did leave, but this is definitely not the last time that we hear from Blondine. And I say this because this next tour story involves the Shirelles, Bo Diddley, and some more folks. So this is what happened. Those people that I just named are all on a tour together, okay? And the Shirelles are very, very young. Etta James is set to be their chaperone. Although she's young too, she's older than them, so they really, really young, okay? So anyways, there's an after party after the show at this house, and it's just going crazy. Everybody's partying, drinking. Bo Diddley is there, and he has his camera out. And so he's walking around all the rooms, and he gets to one room, and he's like, ooh, yeah, you know, ooh, I like what I'm seeing in here. Get it, boy, get it, you know. So Etta is like, what the heck is going on in there? So she goes and walks to the room, pushes the door open. All she sees is Blondine laid out on the bed, spread eagle, and little Willie John kind of just popped up over her like this and going bloop, 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 bloop. You know, he flicking. And what he's flicking is not up here. He's flicking something down there. So y'all get what I'm trying to say? And he's just doing that, and Blondine is like, and then she looks at the door and she's like, Etta, hey girl, how you doing? But before they could talk anymore, Etta starts hearing some giggling behind her, and she remembers, oh my gosh, the Shirelles are behind me. Sure enough, she turned around and the Shirelles peeking over in the door too, laughing and giggling at what they saw. So Etta James shoos them away, and then Bo Diddley dancing in the background with his camera. And Etta James said that Bo Diddley recorded some of the worst things ever. She said that if any of his family members have those tapes or something like that, she says that she know that they have seen some freaky things, because she said that Bo Diddley has had almost every celebrity from back in their time butt naked doing orgies and all kind of stuff like that on his videotape. And some of y'all be in these doggone comments talking about, my granny was a backup singer for so-and-so. Child, you better be hoping your granny ain't on one of them Bo Diddley tapes. And so I have told you a lot of tour stories, and there are still more to come, but I want to pause right here and let you know that Etta has now left Modern Records, and she is now with Chess Records, okay? And she is also dating Harvey Fuqua. Is that right? Because last time I said Fuqua, and baby, y'all went to town on me on them comments. So Harvey Fuqua and Etta James are in a relationship. Well, she's in a relationship with him. He's okay with the world seeing that Etta James is his woman. But that's it. He ain't doing nothing else for her. Etta is actually spending her money on him. She is buying him diamond rings. She is buying him little gadgets, buying his love. You know what I'm saying? And he's not doing any of that. Only thing he's doing is saying, hey, this is my girlfriend, and laying some. But that's it. So anyways, now that Etta is with Chess, she records All I Could Do Was Cry, and that song does well. And so she is back on tour. And this next tour tale involves Little Richard. And she says that Little Richard was very talented, but she also could tell that he was a man that was unsure of himself, like almost insecure. And she said that he was so insecure that he was trying to make people call him King Richard. Like after one of the shows, she had went back to his room and she knocked on the door and she was like, Richard. The person at the door cracked the door and was like, don't you mean King Richard? And Etta said, King Richard where? And so she barged open the door, and Little Richard was sitting on the couch, and she was like, you trying to make me call you King Richard? He gonna jump up, girl, nah, that's just, you know, don't pay attention to that. And Etta was like, And that pretty much summed up her story of the interaction with him, but she did say that she saw him participate in several orgies as well. Now, the next tour story involves Jackie Wilson. And Etta said that he was another one that she was attracted to, and she said that stuff about him being a ladies' man is true. And she also said that Jackie was somebody that she probably could have gotten, but she decided not to because she said Jackie Wilson was full of himself. She said he would invite them to his apartment, and when they got there, they would sit on the couch, and Jackie would come out the back of the apartment and start dancing, and you know, he also would put on one of his records. Then he would get out in front of them and talk about himself. I got this album coming out. Guys, did y'all hear my new song? And she really couldn't see how any of the other women were in a relationship with him because it was all about him. Now, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but not only is Etta with Chess Records, Harvey at this time is also with Chess Records, and Harvey also has his Moonglows. So this next tale is about a tour when Etta was with Harvey and the Moonglows and a woman named Titty Tassel Tony. And Titty Tassel Tony was what her name said. You know, she wore titty tassels. She was a shake dancer, a stripper. And this story also has some tea in it, because the one thing I haven't told y'all is that at this time, Marvin Gaye was a part of the Moonglow. And Etta said of Marvin Gaye that this guy could sing better than everybody. He had a nice smile. He was very handsome. And she said he was cocky. He was very cocky and he was arrogant. But she also said that he was troubled and he was moody. But here's the tea about that tour. Marvin Gaye and Titty Tassel Tony had some stuff going on, and when they did, everything went haywire. And Etta says it's because Titty Tassel Tony was too freaky and also kind of insecure, and Marvin Gaye was just unsure of himself. He was just kind of standoffish. Let me explain it to you. So the thing is that Titty Tassel Tony and Marvin Gaye are having intercourse, okay? They are having relation. But the way it happens is that they'll be together that night, but the next day, Marvin is not even really wanting to talk to her. You know what I'm saying? So she's wanting them to have some kind of closeness, not even really be in a relationship. But she's wanting this man to acknowledge her, maybe flirt with her, talk to her even, but Marvin won't do any of that. And Etta says that she feels like the more Titty Tassel Tony titillated Marvin or turned him on, the more moody he got, the more angry he got, and kind of turned away from her. And that kind of sounds like what his video was. You know, when I said he was this sexual ball of confusion, that is what all of this sounds like. Like he was uncomfortable with being turned on, or he was uncomfortable with losing control. So now you have the basis of their relationship. Well, things hit the fan, honey, because one night, Titty Tassel Tony and Marvin Gaye, although they do not get along during the day, at nighttime, they go to the room and they do what they have to do. So like I was saying, one night they did what they had to do, and then the next day, everybody noticed that there is a lot of tension. And so Marvin is just sitting there like, you know, and Titty Tassel Tony coming up to him. So this how it's gonna be? So you can sit up there and lay down with me, but you can't talk to me. And then she starts head and slapping him in the face. And Etta's like, girl, what is wrong with you? And Titty Tassel Tony gonna turn around and tell her, I sat up here and went down and done some stuff to him, but when it was my turn, he wanna sat up there and say he finished. So Titty Tassel Tony was upset because Marvin would not go down and return the favor, and child, she acted a fool. So like I said, she is slapping on Marvin and all this kind of stuff, and finally Marvin is like, leave me alone, and he pushes her back. And when he does this, because they're all teenagers and young and stupid, Harvey's crazy self goes to Marvin and pushes him and says, oh, y'all make up. You know you love that girl. Well, as soon as Marvin bumps into Titty Tassel Tony, they are fighting. I mean, like, Marvin is fighting too. It's punches and hair going everywhere. They were really going at it. They're fighting so hard that they fall in the ditch, and as soon as they hit the ditch, Marvin says, get this girl off of me, get her off of me. And then so they pull Titty Tassel Tony off of him, and when she comes up, she's like this. Ugh! She got a chunk of Marvin's stomach in between her teeth. She has bit a plug out of his stomach. I'm talking about meat and skin in between her teeth. So Titty Tassel Tony is like, you know, and Marvin running around with blood leaking from his stomach, just help me. It was just a complete disaster. So anyways, now everybody is back at chess, and Etta is once again in the recording studio, and this time she records at last. She doesn't know it yet, but this is going to definitely be her breakout hit. So she records at last, she gets back, and she goes to tour again. And this next tour tale is about the queen of divas, honey, Miss Dinah Washington. So Etta and Dinah are at the same gig, but Dinah is in the audience. She is not performing. She is just there to have a good time. So Etta gets up on stage, you know, and she kind of wanted to show off. So she sings At Last. She sings All I Can Do Is Cry, you know, all of her hits. And then at the end, she starts singing a song called Unforgettable. Well, this song belongs to Dinah Washington. As a matter of fact, it's one of her hit songs. So as soon as Etta opens her mouth to sing, Dinah stands up and says, girl, don't you ever sing one of the Queen's songs. And Etta is so ashamed that she runs off stage, you know, just tears flooding down her face. And when she gets backstage, she goes in her dressing room and she is just crying. You know, she is just broken down. And she hears a knock at the door. And Dinah comes into the dressing room and she is still fussing. She tells Etta, don't you ever pull no stuff like that. Not when I'm around. And then she notices Etta is like really just, you know, just really crying. And so Dinah starts to soften up and she's like, okay, baby, I'm sorry. Maybe I shouldn't have said it like that. Maybe I came off too harsh. But that is a lesson that you had to learn. Don't you ever sing an artist's song when that artist is sitting in the crowd. Don't ever do that. And so Etta is like, you know, still crying. And so Dinah is like, listen, calm down, baby. You can hang out with me for the rest of the night. And so she does. And not only did she hang out with Dinah on this night, she also kept in contact back and forth with Dinah Washington, and she made contacts with Sarah Vaughan. She even talked about a time where she heard Dinah Washington and Sarah Vaughan talking to each other, mentioning her and saying, man, I'm worried about her. You know, she's like a young Billie Holiday. And Sarah's like, she's just like a young Billie Holiday. And y'all don't know why they said that now, but y'all finna find out in just a minute. So while Etta is touring, she finds out that her song At Last is a mega hit. She finally has a crossover that both black and white audiences love, you know, so now she is really the queen of chess. And she says that she is just so happy nothing can break her spirit. And then sadly, something does break her spirit. And right now, guys, I am going to tell you a story within a story, okay? I don't want you guys to get lost, but the only way I can give you guys the feeling and the emotion of this story is for me to tell you a story within a story. So I'm about to start this story. A few months prior to February of 1960, Ray Charles has employed a driver named Charles, and this driver is not a good driver. Ray starts to notice that when he's at his gigs and he's playing his piano, he's hearing the crowd, you know, sing, Ray. And not only is he hearing the crowd, he's hearing Charles. Charles is out there drinking and having a good time with the crowd. Now, this is a big deal because drivers, when they get the celebrity to the gig, the driver is supposed to go and sleep, you know, get well rested. They are definitely not supposed to be in the audience with everybody else. Not only does Ray hear Charles at the gigs, he also hears him at the after party. So Charles is drinking and dancing with everybody else instead of getting his sleep. And Ray don't say anything at first, but then every time they get in the car, Charles is swerving, going all off the road. And so Ray tells him, listen, man, you need to sleep. And so Charles is like, yeah, I'll get it together. He never does. He still swerves and everything. And so Ray is like, I'm sorry, dude. I got to let you go. And so Charles is like, okay, that's cool. So he's moping around, not having a job. And then he runs into Jesse Belvin. He tells Jesse Belvin, you know, I'm a driver, but I don't have a job. And so Jesse Belvin is like, you know what, man? I feel bad for you. You need some income. You can be my driver. So Jesse now has this driver, Charles, and it is now February of 1960. Jesse is performing in Arkansas, and Jackie Wilson is also on the same bill performing with him. After the show, they are leaving, and Jackie notices that Jesse is still getting in the old beat up car, and Jackie is like, man, I'm driving a 1960 Cadillac, but guess what, dude? I got my 1959 Cadillac at home. I don't even drive this sucker no more. It's down in Dallas. So Jackie is like, okay, I'm leaving right now to go to Dallas. Y'all jump in the car and follow me. You can get the car. And so when they jump in their cars, there's Jackie in this car in the front, Jesse in this car right here, right behind him, and Jesse's band, I do believe, in the car behind him. So all three cars are, you know, driving down the street. All of a sudden, the band, the car in the back, starts to see Jesse's car swerving, going all over. And remember, Jesse's driver is this guy, Charles. Well, Jackie doesn't see any of this because Jackie is in the front car. So every time that Charles swerves, Jesse's car, it swerves, the band starts flashing their lights, trying to get him to wake up because they know he's asleep. This happened for a few times, and then finally, everything went to normal. Charles was driving straight for a while, so the band relaxed. Well, suddenly, Charles falls back to sleep. He veers over into the opposite lane, and another car is coming and boom, hits them head on. The band says they were startled because as soon as the impact happened, they saw the whole sky light up. It was a huge explosion. When they saw it, they knew that Jesse has crashed. But even though the band saw it, Jackie did not see it, so Jackie is going on driving down to Dallas. So the band pulls up beside Jesse's car and they get out, and as soon as they get out, they see Jesse has flown through the windshield. His clothes and stuff are ripped to shreds like Frankenstein's clothes or something. Also, his face is all cut up. His nose is not even attached to his mouth anymore. His nose is flailing in the wind like that, and his head is hanging on by a shred. Then they look at the driver, Charles, and he is already dead. He died on impact. Then they open the door to where Joanne is, and she is stuffed under the radio. And this is because right when they were impacting, Jesse woke up and pushed his wife down up under the radio so she could be safe. Well, it did save her life because, like I said, she is alive when they opened the door. So they pulled Joanne out, but she has a crushed pelvis, she has a crushed chest, and also she has a broken arm. They rush her to the hospital. When they get there, the hospital tells them, we can't see her. Do you guys have any admission money? And unfortunately, the band did not have any admission money. And so back to Jackie Wilson, like I said, he don't even know none of this stuff happened. So he's driving. He makes it all the way down to Dallas, and he's waiting on everybody. He's like, I guess That fool said, forget the car. So he goes into his house. As soon as he steps in the house, the phone is ringing off the hook. He picks it up, and the band member is like, Jesse had a wreck. And his wife, Joanne, she's still alive, but we don't have any money for the hospital to take her, so they won't see her. Jackie gets in his car, drives all the way back up to Arkansas from Dallas just to pay the hospital the admission money to have Joanne admitted into the hospital. So Joanne is admitted into the hospital, and she's in a coma, but she is fighting. And she's fighting so hard, sometimes she even opens her eyes. But there is one thing that she is doing no matter whether her eyes are closed or open. She's banging on the side of the bed, and it's going doom, doom, doom. She's hitting it 3 times like that. She's constantly doing it. And so nobody can figure out what the heck is going on. And her father flies in and sits by his daughter's bedside, and she's just hitting the bed, and people are like, you know, what the heck is she doing? And her daddy starts to think about it. And then he's like, I know what she's doing. And they're like, what is she doing? And he's like, she's doing that because she hears everybody else's voice, but she don't hear her husband's voice. And it said that the dad leaned over to Joanne and says, Joanne, if you're looking for Jesse, baby, he didn't make it. He passed on. And they said she never banged the bed again. She lay back and closed her eyes, and she passed away. And so tragedy struck. The young Jesse Belvin, only 27 years old, and his wife Joanne, very young couple, were dead. And Etta was so sad about it because Jesse was her friend. She loved her friend. And she also said that he was supposed to be the next big star. Everybody knew it. She says that you could ask anybody at that time. Jesse Belvin was supposed to be it. He was supposed to be the next big star. And, you know, his life was just taken away from him. And she also loved his wife, Joanne. But back to the main story. Although Etta is hurt, she does move on with her life. Harvey had left her to go to Anna Records. And when he went to Anna Gordy Records, he got with Anna's sister, Gwen, and left Etta like she wasn't nothing. Just left her blowing in the wind. And when she sang Something's Got a Hold on Me and it did numbers, she said that, you know, she felt very cocky. She felt very good. And she said she shouldn't have felt cocky, though, because she started doing too much. And one of the things she started doing was heroin. She felt like she was a big star now. You know what I'm saying? Everybody else was doing heroin. So she started to do it. And she said when she got that first shot of heroin, she loved it. She fell absolutely head over heels. And Etta James, from this point on, y'all, oh Lord, it's terrible. From this point on, was hooked on heroin. Now, at first, when Etta was on heroin, it was not really that bad. You know what I'm saying? She could kind of manage her habit. As a matter of fact, I don't know if she really tried to quit her habit, but I do know she tried to juggle it while also becoming a member of the Nation of Islam. She went to the Nation of Islam. She went to the mosque, and, you know, she was reading the pamphlets, changed her name to James Etta X. But, child, she said she wasn't really serious, child. She said she was eating pork, you know, laughing at the bean pies, all kind of stuff. So that didn't last long. Now, she did meet Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali, but, you know, that's about it. Now, it was also around this time that she had a tale that had to do with James Brown. Now, this is not a tour tale. She was not on tour. I think she was actually in LA at home, and James Brown came into town to do a show. And he was supposed to be singing his song that he recorded with B. Ford. And let me tell you something. Etta James said that B. Ford was pregnant, and that's why she couldn't perform. But not only did she say that, she said that B. Ford was pregnant when James Brown took her from Joe Tex. I did not know that. So apparently B. Ford was pregnant by one of them. I'm not sure. But Etta says B. Ford was pregnant when she was with Joe Tex and James Brown took her. So anyways, back to the story. James Brown is in LA. He's supposed to be performing with B. Ford. B. Ford cannot perform. So he comes to Etta and he's like, hey, will you sing this other part for me? I need a woman to perform for me. And Etta is like, yeah, sure, I'll sing with you. So Etta gets to the theater and she's seeing how James is acting. You know, she says he's very controlling. He's acting crazy. You know, he won't calm down. And he's telling everybody know you got to be here 30 minutes before the show starts. You got to be here 30 minutes before the show starts. Etta is there, sitting and waiting. James comes to her and says, hey, baby, you know this town. Go get me these type of socks. It was a certain type of sock that he was very particular about, and he wanted her to go get those socks. So Etta goes and starts shopping, looking for those socks. Well, she couldn't find them anywhere. She went all over LA, and she finally found them. When she gets back to the theater, she is like 5 minutes past the mandatory 30-minute time. Soon as she walks through the door, where you been? Never mind, don't tell me you fired. And Etta's like, fired? Wait a minute, you can't do that to me. Hell, I can't. Watch me. You fired. And Etta starts to talk to him and she was like, well, wait a minute, I went to do this for you. But while she's talking, James Brown goes and taps his bodyguard on the shoulder. This guy's name is Big Ben. He goes and stands in front of Etta like that and tells her, Mr. Brown likes for his artists to be on time. You're fired. And Etta was like, well, I would have been on time had he not been doing this and I had to go get his socks. You know, she's going off at the mouth. And so Big Ben looks at her and says, you got a big mouth. And as soon as he says that, James Brown peeks from beside him because Big Ben is way up here. So James Brown peeks from beside him and says, yeah, she's fired. Get her and her big mouth out of here. And so Etta is raising hell like, oh my gosh, like this is some messed up BS, you know. But while she's fighting, Jackie Wilson comes over there and tells James Brown, well, if she's fired, I'm walking too. And this made James stuck because he knew he couldn't carry his show without Jackie Wilson. So he had to change his mind and tell Etta, you know what, you're not fired. You know, you can sing the show with me. So now, y'all, we're going to pull back on some of the stories about touring with other artists and things like that and focus a little bit on Etta because, see, now, like I said, she is on heroin. Now, there is something good that happens right when she gets on drugs. She does buy herself a house, but as soon as she gets that house, her finances go haywire because the only thing she is worried about is getting her next fit. Heroin runs Etta James down so badly and so quickly that she runs out of money. She soon finds herself stealing. She's doing anything that she can to get this drug. And not only is she on this drug, a lot of her bandmates are on this drug. And she has some horror stories about how she witnessed 2 overdoses. One of those overdoses happened to a band member named Butch. Now, Etta has been on heroin for a while at this time, okay? And so now she's not necessarily on a tour because nobody is really booking her, but she does have a gig down in Texas. So she goes to Texas, but they have no heroin. And as soon as they get to the hotel in El Paso, I think it was, she and some of her band members run across the border to Juarez, Mexico, get a bag of heroin and come back to the hotel in El Paso. And when she gets back to the hotel, they notice that this is China White. That is what Etta calls it. And this is very deadly. You know, if you don't know what you're doing, like this is the good stuff. So Etta says that she doesn't waste any time. She shoots up and everybody else does. And Butch, who does not do any drugs, is looking at them and he's like, man, you know, y'all make that stuff look so good. I want to do it. And so Etta's like, no, Butch, this is not for you. And Butch is like, no, I really want to do it. He keeps asking them. So finally they say yes. Well, as soon as Butch shoots up in his arm, he leans back like this and then he goes like this. Etta and everybody else freak out. You know, they start screaming his name. They throw him on the bed and they're hitting him with a wet rag and everything, just trying to do anything to wake him up. And he gets up and he's like, you know, what's wrong with y'all? You know, calm down. And so Etta calms down because he's up and alert. But while he's talking, he urinates on himself and he starts passing gas like uncontrollably. So Etta understands that he's kind of losing control of his bodily functions, but she doesn't worry that much because he's talking. As a matter of fact, he's sitting up. And Etta tells him, listen, dude, you need to walk around and then you need to go to the room with this other guy. This guy's name was John Lewis. Etta says you need to go to John Lewis's room so he can watch over you. And so Butch is like, okay, cool. But first I need to go downstairs and get something out of the trunk of the car. Butch goes down the stairs of the hotel. He gets whatever he needs out of the trunk, but he doesn't come back. And so Etta looks out the window and she sees Butch, the upper body, leaned over in the trunk and his feet are standing on the ground. So they all rush down to go get him. They bring him in the room. They lay him across the bed in John Lewis's room. As soon as Butch gets on the bed, his eyes shut and he starts saying, oh, Lord, help me. Lord, forgive me. Forgive me, God. Oh, God, help me, please. Forgive me for beating my wife. And suddenly his eyes shoot open this big and he just stops talking, stops doing anything. They try slapping him and everything else, but he does not respond. 2 to 3 days after the funeral, there is another band member by the name of Spike Jones who also overdoses. But even after witnessing these overdoses, Etta James will not quit or cannot quit. It even got so bad that she found herself starting to do some disgusting things for the drugs. And let me tell you one of those stories. So she is withdrawing terribly. She's in a hotel room. She's throwing up in all the garbage cans. She can't hardly move and she's shaking and stuff like that. And so she finds out that this elderly guy has some drugs. He is 80 years old. So she goes over to his apartment and when she gets there, he is sitting on a chair with only boxers on and stuff out. And so he tells Etta, I got your drugs, but you know what you got to do? You got to suck some stuff or whatever. And so Etta gets down on her knees and she's crawling to him like this. this. And right when she gets there, she stops. And she said she just got up and she ran out of the room. She went to Chess Records the next day and she was like, Leonard, I need you to help me. This is ridiculous. I'm doing too much. And Leonard was like, yeah, you need some help. He told her, if you don't get help, you are going to die, Etta. And she was like, I know. That is why I want you to help me. And so he says, okay, I will. So that very next day, he had her checked into a convalescent home. And this convalescent home had a doctor and nurses on staff. And when Etta gets in there, everything is good because they're actually feeding her heroin from a drip, trying to slowly wean her off. And so it's not heaven for Etta, but everything is pretty much good. That is until the 5th day. On the 5th day, all hell breaks loose. So Etta says early that morning on the 5th day, the doctor is in there and he's checking her out, and then he's just kind of standing by the wall with the nurse, and he tells the nurse, keep an eye on her. And the nurse is like, okay. And he's like, no, for real, keep an eye on her. And so Etta is kind of looking and listening and like, okay, I wonder what that's about. By late evening, Etta cannot even move. Her jaw is locked up. She can't turn her head. The only thing she can do is open her eyes. And her brain was sending out messages, but her body would not reply. So she said it took her a minute. Everything was cloudy. When her senses finally came back, she started hearing something in this ear. And when she focused in and started listening, this is what she heard. Please, God, Jesus, help her. Help her, Lord Jesus. Please, God, Jesus, help her, Lord Jesus. Help her, Lord Jesus. Immediately, Etta is struck with fear because she understands that somebody is praying for her. Somebody is praying like, you know, she about to die or something like that. While feeling like that, she started to drift away. And as soon as she started to lose conscious, she felt a her face and it slapped her back conscious, and the doctor was like, focus, Etta, focus. And after that, he started pumping sodium in her body. He also gave her a shot in her groin and a shot in her neck. She started to feel her legs immediately get inflamed and like they were swollen and started burning. And then she heard the nurse say she's got fluid on the brain, doctor. The other nurse was still in her ear, and Etta said she was praying like a demon, speaking in tongues and everything. And then she said she heard the sides of her bed raise up, and they were like, we can't let her swallow her tongue. So they forced her mouth open, pulled her tongue out, and put a stick on her tongue and kind of taped the stick on her tongue so her mouth could be open so she wouldn't swallow her tongue. Immediately after they did that, she started feeling her body jerk and contortion in the worst ways possible. Almost like she was demonically possessed. Her body was going everywhere. What was happening is she was having a deadly seizure. While she was still jerking, they rushed her and put her in an ambulance, and the ambulance drove her to the hospital. As soon as she got into the room, the same doctor that was at the convalescent center came barging through the door, and he put cut downs on her ankles and started sticking tubes into her legs. He also stuck a long needle into her back and drew out a lot of fluid from her brain. Then he hooked her up to an IV and started feeding her 6 million units of penicillin. She started feeling her body contract, and I was like it was caving in on itself. And right when she was about to give in, it was a pow on her chest, and the doctor was like, breathe, Etta. And so she'd have to try to breathe, and he was like, again, breathe, Etta. And finally, Etta says by sheer force, this doctor got her to breathe and everything stabled out. She said that doctor had saved her life. And she said, come to find out what it was is that she had contracted tetanus from a dirty needle. And she said something about the doctor looking at her. He saw something in her early that day. And she said she was so grateful because that doctor saved her life. And so after this ordeal, Etta did stay for a while in the hospital. You know, she got off the drugs, she got recovered. And then when she left the hospital, she moved into an apartment that had an adjoining apartment where some nurses lived. And Etta started living her life the good way. You know, she started exercising, she was eating right. She got all the way down to 148 pounds. She said by the time she was done with it all, her hair had grown all the way down her back. It was black again. She felt really, really good about herself. She felt like a brand new person. And so she went to Leonard Chess and was like, you know, Leonard, I'm ready to get back out there. Send me to New York. And Leonard was like, Etta, no, you're not ready to get back out there. And if you get back out there, you're going to get messed up again. And she's like, no, I'm not. I just want to show off my new figure. I'm proud of myself. And so he's finally like, you know, I can't tell you what to do. If you want to go to New York, go to New York. And so Etta's like, yes. And really, she don't even have to go as far as New York to get those compliments. As soon as she gets to the airport, somebody says, oh, Etta, is that you? Girl, you are looking good, girl. Woo. And so she turns around and it's Aretha Franklin. And so Etta was like, you know, thank you, girl. Thank you. You look good too. So she she hops on the plane and she gets to fulfill what she wants to fulfill. She pulls up at the Cecil Hotel in New York. She steps out of the cab and everybody's like, oh, Etta James, wow, you're beautiful. And that is what she wanted to hear. When she gets into the hotel, she runs into John Lewis, who is the same man that had that hotel room where that butch guy died. She runs into him and he pulls out a bag of heroin. And he asked her, do you want some? And Etta says, no, I'm through with all that stuff. And he's like, okay, cool. And so he takes some himself. And Etta starts to think, well, this time it's just sniffing. It ain't shooting. And so she asked him for some. He let her have it. She sniffs. She is right back where she started. She is hooked on heroin. And heroin is not the only bad thing she got hooked on when she was in New York. So Etta is in New York. She's partying, having a good time. And then at one of these parties, her next man walks into her life. And Etta calls this guy the pimp. She said that she didn't even want to give him the satisfaction of putting his name out there. The only thing that we know about him from the book is that he was a jail keeper and he was from the Roxbury. So anyways, Etta is at the party. She spots the pimp. She says he is very, very handsome. Says he has a thin mustache. His hair is slicked down and he got all the ladies around him. He's sniffing cocaine. He walks over to her and whispers in her ear, "Don't go to strangers, darling. Come to me." And Etta is just like, laughing, when really she should have cussed his tail out. Because see, those are song lyrics to Etta Jones's song. So this dude think he's slick. Don't even know who he talking to. Got the wrong singer, and trying to do some song lyrics. But Etta, instead of embarrassing him and bursting his bubble, she laughed it off because she was into this guy. And so from that night on, she and the pimp started talking, but Etta started getting people coming from everywhere telling her, that is a bad dude. Don't mess with him. He don't mean no good, Etta. He works women, he's very violent. They even told her he killed his ex-girlfriend, but Etta says she did not care about any of that. She said all of this stuff excited her. She liked hearing it. It made her feel like she had a big bad man. And she found out real quick that this was a big bad man. So Etta has been talking to the pimp. Also, they have made love a few times. And Etta says that this was one of the reasons that she was hooked on him. It felt so good to her. And also she said he was the first one that would go down and do things. She's never experienced that before, and she never had experienced or before she got with him. So she was really hooked on him. And so now Etta has invited him to come visit her today in her room. He has told Etta already, I don't want you doing heroin. And Etta tells him, boy, I ain't doing no heroin. Lying her little stinking panties off, knowing that she's still been doing heroin. But anyways, before he comes to the room, she go gets her bag of heroin. She snorts it all up. So it's gone by the time he gets there. There's a knock at the door. When she opens the door, the pimp walks in and says, you had some heroin in here, haven't you? And Etta is like, no. Before she can get it out of her mouth, he has knocked her across the room. And he tells her, you lying to me. So Etta is over there like shaking and crying and stuff, and she starts crawling to her purse. The reason why is because she has a gun in her purse that somebody had given her for protection. But instead of getting all the way to her purse, she stops. And so the pimp goes to the purse, he opens it up, and he sees the gun, and he becomes demonic. He becomes furious, and he starts smashing her in the back of the head, just beating her, punching her over and over in the back of the head. And Etta at first just stunned, like just stunned, and finally she screams real loud, like, stop! And so he stops, and then he leaves. Now, Etta says that they stopped talking for a while, a few weeks, but you know how it is. People get back together. And that is what happened. Well, this time things were going good until Etta was invited to Jackie Wilson's house for just a kickback. So she goes, and when she goes, I know there's Etta, a few people, and a man named Frazier there. They're just chilling. All of a sudden, there's a boom, boom, boom at the door. Etta said she knew by the knock that it was the pimp. And so Frazier got up to open the door. As soon as he opened the door, boo, across the lip, the pimp has knocked him out. And so Jackie comes running from the back, and he jumps on the pimp. He wailing on him. Etta said that Jackie whooped the pimp's tail. So while Jackie is trying to push him out, the pimp pointed to Etta and was like, you ain't nothing but a Jackie Wilson groupie. Next time I see you, I'ma kill you, B. And then he leaves. And Etta was scared of this threat for a little while, but he ended up seeing her again, and instead of killing her, there was some of this stuff going on. So, they got back together. And then the worst incident of all happened.
And if you guys are interested in the worst thing of all that happened to Etta when she was dating the pimp, Please tune in for part 2 that will be uploaded shortly. I'm sorry, y'all. The video is just so long. I had to break it up into 2 parts. So, you know what I'm saying? Like I always say, don't beat me up just yet. It's going to be up soon.